to navigate the next frontier in technology procurement, Gen AI powered enterprise clouds, with Vijay Tanjopre, Global Director of Sourcing and Procurement at NVIDIA. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Well, you have the pleasure of closing the show today, so the virtual floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Isn't it interesting that every session that we have had so far, I think I'm seeing like the AI word being used everywhere. And we started with a keynote that's about Gen AI, and we are ending the day with another closing keynote that's again with Gen AI. So I'm happy to be part of the session. And today, I think people have talked about how they are leveraging AI for different processes, different workflows that they have. But how do we source AI? I don't think a lot of sessions touched upon it. So today I'm planning to talk about and share some insights that we have taken at NVIDIA, and we have seen that coming to fruition. So we'll be talking about how to source Gen AI. So without further ado, let me go into the overall market that we are seeing for AI. I think some of the interesting stats that I would like to share. So AI is a $407 billion market size. That is the estimated market size by 2027. And last year it was close to 87 billion, less than 100 billion. It's almost going to quadruple in the next 5 years. I think that's the estimate. And this is all Forbes and all the leading analyst reports that are saying. And the second one is, especially here in the US, if you look at it, they are estimating around 21% net increase to US GDP by 2030 due to AI. This will result in many productivity. This is like coming from different directions. We'll talk about like some of the use cases that are popular here in the US. And whether you know or not, we are already using almost like 4 billion devices that are already powered by AI-based voice assistants. And 64% of the businesses expect AI to increase productivity. So I think we are seeing AI being pervasive, and it's like it is cutting across all the industry segments that we have. So I don't think it's some people, they tend to say like, hey, is it like a temporary thing? No, I think AI is here to stay. So I think in terms of some of the potential use cases, right, and then these are some of the popular ones, and there are many reasons behind like why they are really popular. We'll talk about like what are those foundational pillars, but really a high level one is predictive analysis. I think we had a lot of panelists and speakers talk about it. This is like analyzing large data sets to derive insights, and a lot of fields they use it. Medical diagnosis, financial analysis and forecasting, supply and demand planning. So predictive analysis is gaining a lot of traction when it comes to AI deployments. Customer experience, that's another area where obviously enterprise across the globe, they are trying to transform the customer experience to more enhanced version, like talk about chatbots, natural language processing, translation services. These are all based on AI workflows at the back end. Productivity and process automation. I think this is one of the low-hanging fruit, I would say, where you can streamline business processes to improve efficiency. And say, for example, you're in a Zoom meeting, you're in a Teams meeting, AI can help summarize the meetings, take notes. It can summarize the emails, documents, extracting contract KPIs. These are things that we have seen a lot of productivity improvement across. So creativity and content generation, I think this is, again, one of the basic or probably one of the low-hanging fruits again. So we have marketing content creation. There have been a lot of blog posts, social media content that have been created by AI, sales, personalized messages, sales scripts. Even the product prototypes, I think they have started developing it based on the AI workflows. The last, but not the least, the computer vision. I think there is a lot of buzz around the self-driving cars. So they all run on based on image and video recognition, object detection. So they process like tons of images, tons of videos. to help the car drive itself. So these are some of the major potential business use cases that we have seen across the industries. That being said, there are other customized use cases that are being developed by respective industries or companies wherever they see fit. So moving on, okay, so we talk about AI. What are the building blocks? What do we need to really think about when it comes to AI deployment in an enterprise? And that too, when you're talking about large-scale deployments. One is obviously, I think this has been something that's off-quoted, but I think we need to make sure that AI deployments, they are aligned to the business strategy. It's easy to get into a use case trap. We just take some random use cases and we start putting in a lot of time and effort, money into it. And we don't want to be at a point where it's not giving you the ROI that you expect. So obviously we need to avoid use case traps, make sure the use cases are well defined with business ROI and outcome that's aligned to the business strategy. And for AI, I think it's always data. I think the data that you have at the back end, the platform and the infrastructure, and NVIDIA has been like it's a front runner in terms of the AI infrastructure that we provide. All the computing resources, GH100 and GB200, these are like our flagship products that are out in the market. They are primarily used for all the AI workloads. And of course, there are like third-party platforms, talk about ChatGPT, OpenAI platforms, Llama, that's from Meta. So these are like there are a lot of LLMs that you need to kind of go after. So essentially, we need to invest in data, platform, and infra. That's going to be the base for any of the AI deployments you're looking at. And the third one, establish governance control. I think one of the things that we need to make sure is there needs to be guardrails. Whenever you talk about AI, of course, there are concerns around data, privacy, and security. Make sure you have those guardrails. Make sure there is a proper governance framework. There is a steering committee, and whatever that we are progressing during the project, it's all aligned within that framework that you have. The biggest one of all, which I consider, is building your knowledge capital, which is number 4, upskill resources. So there are many versions of AI deployments, but if you're going native with your captive unit, in-house talent, obviously you need to make sure they are like well-groomed, make sure they have the ability to understand the new technology and whether it's data science or AI, ML architecture, the tools and systems. I think that will add a lot of value when you are going for any kind of AI deployment. The last one is monitor and improve. Obviously, these are all good. So once you start the process, you need to continuously monitor, make sure it's within the framework, make sure it's aligned to the business strategy, it's providing, you're working towards that goal. If things do not go as planned, obviously we need to stop, take a pause, adjust it, and then go forward. So those are the building blocks. I think I want to talk about really how is AI being deployed, right? I mean, we talk about AI, but how is it really when the rubber hits the road? How is it actually getting deployed? So there are 2 ways that we see, right? So one is native integration, and the other one is third-party package extension. So native integration is like these are for large enterprises where you have an application. Let's talk about that is a chatbot, right? So you want a custom chatbot. Make sure you want to enhance the customer experience when they reach your website or through any other channel. Obviously, you need to make sure the chatbot at the back end is well trained, so that it can give appropriate response whenever there is a customer query that's coming to you. So obviously in the center, you see the large language model. This is the primary engine. Like I said, this is like OpenAI. They offer like a lot of LLMs. Meta offers the Llama, Amazon, almost all the major players, they have their own LLMs. And these are trained by all the training data sets, whether it could be large data sets, documents, tables, images, chats, whatever you want the LLM to be trained on. Again, this is enterprise data that you have. It's not external data. So make sure when you choose a particular business case, there is enough data set that can be used to train the model. And the last part is you have the application. These are the users. They interact with the application. Whenever they ask a question, these are called as prompts. that go into the LLM model, which is already pre-trained probably, and it's continuously trained. And then based on that, we get a response. So that's native integration because you are working on a custom development based on your enterprise data set and training the LLM model that's specific to your company's use case. There are third-party package extensions. See, there are like companies that may not have enough resources. What do? Right? So when you purchase a software or when you purchase an application, say CRM application, cloud ERP, contract lifecycle management, now the third parties, they themselves provide a Gen AI extension. So it comes along with the base licenses, plus there is an extension that comes along with it. So in that way, you're able to kind of leverage the potential of AI without investing too much into your native, ability, the resources that you have. The biggest advantage out of that is those models will be trained by their many customers. It's not just limited to your data set, but those models will be trained by, like, say, different customers they have. But the risk that they have, obviously, you need to make sure the data that you have within your enterprise is well protected, right? So I think that's the thing you need to make sure that's all taken care of. So those are the typical AI deployment models that we see. Let's talk about like how it is actually sourced, right? What are the licensing models? So now that we have talked about native integration, third party, how is it actually licensed, right? What are the factors that you need to really keep in mind when you go for that? So let's talk about native integration. So here, since we are talking about licensing prompts, input prompts, and then expecting the response from a large language model, they pretty much work on a token or a consumption-based licensing. So they are licensed by tokens. If you go to any of the LLM's websites, they'll clearly tell you. So for example, 1,000 tokens is approximately 750 words in English. It's like a group of characters, words, images. I think they're all characterized as tokens. And you'll be priced per 1,000 tokens or 1 million input and output tokens. Obviously, input token will have a different pricing. Output token will have a different pricing. Output is more about what the language model can give you as a response after ingesting all the data that they have. So obviously, there are key steps that you need to make sure when you are going for this licensing model. You need to obviously estimate the consumption. So talk about the use case, make sure you come up with a proper estimation method in terms of what is the input data size, what is the usage. So how many tokens are you thinking that you will use to make sure you get the desired output, right? So obviously you need to bake in growth projections, the usage, the data size, all this put together, you need to come up with an estimation. And you need to make sure there are like different models out there. So different vendors, they offer like different complexities in terms of like how robust you want the model to be. So if there are like large models, obviously they consume more tokens and it's pricier. So you need to identify based on the use case, what kind of sophistication do you need when you want to interact with a large language model. And the last one is when it comes to negotiation, obviously it's all based on a dollar commit. So when you go and negotiate contracts, they'll say, hey, can you commit like 100,000, 200,000? I'll give you so many tokens. And based on that, the pricing will be decided. So what is a percentage discount of the public pricing that's available there? So something like that. So there are like different models, but again, it's always a balance of trade. Last but not the least, which we have been reiterating, which is monitor and adjust. So once you have these licensing models, make sure like you're tracking the consumption, tracking the usage, you're aligned to the end goal that you want to achieve. So that's on the native integration. Third-party packaged extension, these are like primarily subscription-based licensing. They are not as complex as what you see in the native integration. So if you take essentially this is a bill, right, that you get from, say, a particular application vendor SaaS provider, there'll be a base license cost, and there'll be an extension for Gen AI, right, or AI, whatever you call it. So we have the additional cost that's being tacked on as part of the bill. So it's typically licensed by user, and it's a recurring annual or monthly subscription cost. So some of the key considerations, you want to make sure it's aligned on scope and outcomes, because it's easy to go and boil the ocean, but you need to really focus on the scope and what outcome you want to achieve. And you can strategize the rollout. Do you want to go big bang or start small, do a pilot, probably with a set of users, and then go roll it out for the entire team? That could be an approach. Essentially, when it comes to new technology, things can go wrong. Obviously, you may want to start small. And I think when it comes to third party, the way I look at it, and also we look at it, as it's more of a derived cost. It's not just a random value that can be added to for the AI extension, but you need to think about AI is always an extension that sits on a base license. So obviously there is some inherent value and there is an added value. So obviously if you are paying for AI, it has to be a percentage of the base license cost. So that's why we call it like, hey, we need to negotiate some kind of a derived cost, and you can always step into it. Like, so initial first year, obviously the value could be lower, so the cost could be lower. Then you step into year 2 and year 3, whatever the term of the contract is. Last one, build contract flexibility. Obviously, this is a new technology. Sometimes things may not go as planned. If you want to have that flexibility, then obviously we need to have appropriate contract termination clauses that can help you in case if you want to have a out. So I think we talked about the pillars or the building blocks of AI deployments, how they are licensed. What are some of the key risks and considerations? Just like any other technology, AI also has some of the risks that we need to really assess and also mitigate, and also some considerations. Data quality and availability. Like I said, AI is data hungry. Obviously, we need to make sure we choose use cases where there is enough data for the models to be trained on. So obviously, the ROI and the performance on AI depend on the quality and the volume of the training data sets. It could be mitigated to an extent. Like I said, if you go to the third-party extension, they have a training data set that's based on their customers. So that could mitigate a bit. But again, data is really key. Accuracy and accountability. So again, people have pointed out there could be potential biases based on what the training data set is. Accountability of AI is still unclear. And again, like when there are like biases and there is output coming from AI that may not be like as accurate as you expect, obviously that leads to a lack of trust within your stakeholders. You may want to really make sure like you feed in the right data so that way you can get the desired output. Security risk. This is another concern, but compared to the other ones, this is probably something that needs to be closely watched for. So obviously, there is an increased risk of cyber attacks and security threats from fraudsters. Risk could be mitigated by you have AI-backed threat detection. So if you need to really mitigate the risk arising from security, probably use encryption, authentication protocols, and AI-backed threat detection and scanning systems. The last one, which is the legal and regulatory risk, this is really, really key. And you would have seen all over the news that every single continent is looking at some kind of a governance framework to monitor this. So obviously, data privacy rights and GDPR compliance, these are like probably one of the key hot topics that's being discussed whenever we talk about AI. And there is like risk associated with IP rights. Obviously, if AI wants to really ingest data, you need to make sure we are not violating any kind of IP rights that's out there. So that pretty much sums up my presentation in terms of how we want to really source AI.
Vijay, thank you so much. That was incredibly thorough. And for me, it's an area that isn't explored enough. Procurement professionals are constantly being told, look at AI, look at cloud enterprise, Gen AI powered enterprise clouds and so forth, without necessarily have the guidance and the advice to pick the right ones for them. I'll follow with one final question, and it's somewhere I always go when we're looking at anything to do with Gen AI, because the level of hype and excitement, it almost clouds people's vision about picking the right one. I get a press release that crosses my desk probably every 20 minutes from a different vendor suggesting that their new solution will solve everything, probably including the chicken and egg question, absolutely all of them. For you, how do you cut through the hype to pick the right kind of solution?
So I think, like I said, it always starts with the business strategy and the use cases that you want to really go after. So I think let's remove all the hype. Just make sure you have clearly documented scope. Make sure you have clearly documented goals in terms of what you want to achieve, whether it could be productivity increase, whether it could be extracting data from contracts, things like that. Whatever the goal is, you need to really clearly document that and make sure the scope is well defined. And based on that, you determine what kind of solution that you want to go after. See, for a contract extraction, for example, you may not need the sophisticated models that are out there. Probably you can really manage with some of the low-level models, right? So it's all based on the business strategy and the goals and objectives that you have. You decide the solution, you put a team in place, you have the project team members, and then you continuously monitor and track, make sure like you have all the frameworks that are in place. I think essentially going back to basics, right, in terms of the building blocks that will make the AI deployment successful.
Vijay, some fantastic advice over the last 25 minutes. I'm sure this is going to be well watched back, this presentation, because there is so much information in such a short period of time, for which I thank you very much, and thank you for joining us here at Procurement and Supply Chain Live Singapore.